Welcome back to the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I am your host, Chris Jones. Today I have with me Melanie Yoast. Melanie is an author, speaker, performance coach, and trusted advisor for high achievers who push themselves to get the most out of their business and their life, but are making themselves crazy trying to have it all. A psychotherapist for 20 years, Melanie combines a wealth of effective and creative tools that empower her clients to transform their lives, their situations, and most importantly, their outcomes. When people are looking for an opportunity to create a 180-degree turn in their finances, beliefs, business, and lives, they seek Melanie's acute wisdom and trusted advice. Melanie, welcome to the Art and Business of Writing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so tell me, what exactly does a psychotherapist do?
Well, a psychotherapist is really a therapist or a counselor, someone that you talk to about your issues. I worked with a lot of trauma and a lot of anxiety and depression. Mostly, I started out working with seriously emotionally disturbed kids and their families, and then I moved into working mostly with adolescents and adults.
Oh, very cool. So being a coach, I guess that is very beneficial to have that sort of background.
It is. It's coaching and therapy are very similar, but therapy comes from an illness-based point of view, and therapy comes from a wellness-based point of view. But the way that I always did therapy was more like coaching anyway.
So how'd you segue from therapy into coaching? What was the transition there?
The transition, well, I decided actually I needed a change in business model because as a therapist, I only got paid when people were in front of me, and my income was dependent on the weather or childcare or traffic or flu season or whatever. So I wanted to move into coaching because I could structure it differently and I could branch out. I started working with business owners, and my first target market was working with other therapists, other healers, and helpers, teaching them how to build their business. Because as a therapist, I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and found that as they worked on their own issues, things in their business often improved.
Awesome. Now let's get into your book. And your book's The Alchemy of Success.
It is not.
It's not The Alchemy of Success.
No, my book is it's called Give from the Heart, Receive What You're Worth: The Helping Professional's Guide to Transforming Your Relationship with Money. It's quite a mouthful.
Well, let's talk about the book. So tell me, basically, when did you decide you were interested in writing this type of book?
Well, it's funny. Okay, so probably back in 2008, I took a course with Donna Kozak, write a book in a weekend. And I had a young child at the time, so I cleared the space, weekend, was in with my coaching group, and started writing this book. And it's probably a good, well over 3/4 of the way done. But that wasn't my book I needed to put out. So fast forward 2 years later, I still had her kind of format. And again, I cleared a weekend and I wrote this book in a weekend in 2010, the beginning of 2010.
Wow. So what's the process of writing a book in a weekend?
It was intensive. I mean, the way that her program was structured, I don't even know if she's running that program anymore, but the way that it was structured was very intensive. The second time, quite frankly, it was so much easier because I had been writing regular blog posts and newsletter articles. So as I decided what I wanted to write, and it was really about the relationship with money for helpers and healers who have a lot of times, and artists do this too, they take this unconscious vow of poverty. So I really wanted to write about that concept and give practical steps to increasing your income and getting out of that trap. So I had written quite a bit about it. So once I laid out the structure of my book, I had already written a lot of content, so I just kind of pulled it together, added more. So actually, this book came together quite easily in a weekend.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Now, you said something very interesting to me, unconscious vow of poverty. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yes. A lot of artists and healers have this, you know how priests and nuns take a vow of poverty.
Yes.
And a lot of healers and helpers and artists kind of take that too. I mean, there's so many messages around, if you're trying to help someone. I had a kid one time tell me, you don't really care. You're just doing this for the money. And I laughed hysterically, because the truth of the matter is, if I were going to do anything just for the money, it would not look like that. It would not be putting up with a resentful kid's attitude.
Right.
So, but there is this, people are suspect of helpers and healers who charge money. I mean, look at with ministers, and we're skeptical if they make too much, or artists have a hard time charging because the starving artists. So there are all of these belief systems, because a lot of helpers and healers, they feel like it's their calling. It feels like a spiritual calling or a ministry. And when you look at the ministry, that seems wrong to charge money for ministry.
Wow. Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced that, just being a creative person. It is very unconscious. Like you have this inner dialogue where you want to put out great art, but you don't want to get paid for it. You don't want to get paid for it, but you do want to get paid for it. It is definitely a dance.
Yes, it absolutely is. And there are a lot of artists that feel like, if they get paid well for it, it somehow compromises their art, or it's very interesting. I give talks to artists about this, about money, and also healers, and it's just very interesting to see the belief systems, and society at large really perpetuates that for them, and it reinforces that.
Yeah, I think for, like you talked about it being a spiritual thing, I think that a lot of people who are in these spheres look at money as a worldly thing, as opposed to something else, as opposed to something that you need, one, to live off of, two, that it's okay and acceptable because it is kind of God's provision to you for the work that you do. Well,
it is, and the truth of the money is, not to sound too woo or anything, but everything is energy. I mean, that's what Einstein spent his career proving. Everything is energy. So that means money is energy. And when you understand that money is just energy like everything else, and money comes from God to you through other people, it just makes it a very different point of view. So I talk about that. I talk about, really our relationship with money and how that's developed for people. And religion is certainly a huge influencer.
Oh, yeah, and I can definitely understand that. Now tell me, why did you feel the need to write this book for people?
Well, because at the time, my target market, I saw a lot of people who were, like you were saying with that dance, they don't want to charge money, but they do want money because they need money to live. They were wanting to help people, and they were wanting it to do it full time, so they needed it to support themselves, but they had such a dysfunctional relationship with money, and they didn't want to do what they needed to do to treat their healing work as a business, so it wasn't going to support them. But they didn't want to go and do the soul-sucking thing of, having the job in the IT world or whatever. So it was really helping them come to terms with, it is okay to charge money for doing, for helping people, and it's okay to be happy, and it's okay to accept money.
Yeah, I had a conversation this morning with my wife, ironically, about this very thing. Not about the charging money, but just how when you are a creative person, when you're an artist, like you said, or a healer, or in that sphere, how balance is so important. Like, just, because you feel like you're going to a job, and maybe your job is related to your field. Maybe you work for a publication, or maybe you're a video editor, whatever the case may be, and you feel that corporate suck pull all the energy out. And if you're not doing something at home to counterbalance that, either creating your own videos or doing your own writing, it makes you crabby. I mean, really, it makes you so grumpy. Yes, it absolutely does. And everyone around you. Yes. Oh, man, you become miserable in the whole, all the things around you become miserable right along with you. But as you wrote your book, did you find that you came across any fears or any challenges with putting it together and putting it out there for people? You know what? To be completely honest, I
I was writing it because I was going to an event and I needed to get it done, and it was such a time crunch. Like I said, I wrote it in a weekend and then got it to the editor and got it to the formatter. So it was all, and I was in such a time crunch that I really didn't have the opportunity to be afraid.
That's true.
I just really didn't. And once it was out and I started getting good feedback, and the other thing is some of, my content had been read at different points, little pieces of it, because like I said, it had been newsletter articles, and I'd already gotten feedback on the content separately, put it together, and then at the event where I had premiered it, people bought it and came back to my booth the next day, and because it's a quick read, I mean it's short. And told me how valuable it was. So I immediately got feedback. So I didn't have time to be afraid, and then I immediately got some really positive feedback. So
now, do you find that having that rapid deadline, you said that you didn't have time to be fearful. Do you find that that's true across the board for any endeavor as a coach? Putting a really punchy deadline. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to do this book project in 6 months, I'm going to cut that back to 3 months. Do you feel like that benefits the person actually doing the work?
I think it can. It really does depend on the person, because when we're under pressure and extreme pressure, some people will step up and perform. Some people will it will paralyze them. So it really does depend on the individual person. But for me, it works really well. If I have a deadline, I'm going to make it. And this was I paid quite a bit of money to go to this, to be a vendor at this conference. So I wasn't going to not show up with my book.
Right. Right. Now, as far as writing is concerned, I know you've done other writing before. What do you think the one thing that no one ever tells you about being a writer? Like some of the challenges, some of the pitfalls, or some of the things that writers face?
For me, I think one of the hardest things for me was to find my own voice, because, I wrote in college, I wrote papers, and I wrote in graduate school. And when I first started writing newsletter articles, I was still writing like I was writing a research paper. So it took me a while to find my voice. Now I write like I speak. That was a hard thing for me, though, to really just find my voice and put myself out there and be who I was, and not try and be somebody else. That, and then consistency, because when I wrote my articles or blog posts regularly, I went from once a month to twice a month, and then every week. And when I was writing consistently, writing got much easier. I haven't written anything in almost a year. And the thought of sitting down and writing an article, I'm like, I don't know what to write, because I'm not doing it consistently. But when you get in the habit of doing it consistently, I got to the point I could write a newsletter article in like 45 minutes.
Wow.
Now it would probably take me 3 hours.
Yeah. Isn't that funny just how practice does that?
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about your book some more. Walk me through the book and tell me about some of the broad strokes of the ideas that are in the book.
Well, the beginning talks about our relationship with money and the things that influence it, and then what are some of the replacement thoughts? I'm really not prepared for this question. I haven't looked at my book in a while.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
So, but it really just talks about the relationship we have with money, the things that influence it, alternative beliefs, practical steps. Again, it's written towards healers and helpers that they can take to increase their income. Okay.
And so with your writing process, of course, you organized your book really rapidly. How were you able to put all of your ideas in order in that short a span of time?
Well, one of the things I'm really good at, because I've done a lot of webinars and, like I said, research papers and that sort of stuff, I'm really good at outlining.
Okay.
So anytime if I'm going to do a webinar, I outline it first. And then I see where information fits. So that's what I did, is I outlined it, and I just saw how information fit and how it best flowed. That's just something I'm good at and I like to do.
So how do you outline? Do you outline like strictly on paper? Do you kind of put it on the wall? Because I know there's some writers who like to outline either in a piece of software, or some who, I'm a person who likes to take Post-it notes and put them all over the place and then kind of stack them like in the Scrum method. How do you organize?
I organize on paper. I'm old school. Pen and paper. Anytime I'm going to create new content, I get out my notebook and I write it out, and I draw lines, and I reorganize. I have used the Post-it note method. I just like the old-fashioned paper and pencil. There's something about writing it out, and sometimes I'll have to redo an outline 3 times, 4 times. But yeah, I like to do that.
Yeah, no, I definitely find it effective too, to go the old school route. I've tried using apps and I just get lost in them. It's just not the same to outline in an app than it is to actually write things out.
They have found that there is something about something that happens in the brain when you write things out versus type them out. Now, I did all my writing typing, but there's something that happens in the brain that when you write it out, it affects your brain differently than typing.
And I would tend to totally agree with that. Even when I write I still write longhand before I actually get into the computer, because there are many times when I'm sitting there trying to write something and I freeze when I'm looking at a screen, but I can actually write nonstop by hand. Uh-huh. So I definitely think there's some credence to that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So tell me about, kind of your writing ritual. Like when you're actually sitting down to write anything, do you have any special setup? Do you have a place you like to write? Is there anything that you do before you write or as you write?
I generally write in my office, and almost always with a cup of tea. And the truth of the matter is, I do a lot of circling the chair behavior. So I'll sit down to write, and I'll get stuck, and then, yeah, I need to go change the laundry.
Yes.
So I run down and change the laundry, and I come, and I sit back down, and I might write a sentence and then undo it. And then, I need to go let the dog out, So circling the chair is part of my ritual, I suppose.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that. I do the same thing. I'll write a little bit, then I'll find something else I need. Well, maybe I need to, do some dishes. And I find it it's part of my creative process. Like I process things as I do that. When I get stuck, I'll go wash some dishes. If I get stuck, I'll go for a walk. I'll vacuum a floor, and I feel like it opens my mind. I don't fully understand it, but it does work very well.
Well, I think it's because you're still working. When your brain is trying to figure something out, it's like a program on a computer that's always running in the background. And so when you're focused on something else, we relax the mind by focusing our attention. So when you focus on something else, it just allows that to work through quicker. So I will actually, if I get stuck, I'll go meditate, or I'll take a nap, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll do something else. So that is part of my creative process as well.
Now, in your coaching, do you coach creative people?
Well,
or have you?
I don't know how to answer that. My answer, I guess, would be yes, because I work with business owners and entrepreneurs, and they tend to be very creative. But would they identify themselves as creatives? Probably not. But they're very creative. So I'm not sure how to answer that. So I'm going to go with yes.
I guess I was thinking on the lines of painters, writers, people who are more, I guess, performing arts, fine arts, writing, that sort of thing.
I have a client right now. They do their image development. She's a graphic designer.
Yeah.
And he's a web developer. They're a husband-wife team. So yeah, I have, and like I said, I've spoken a lot with artists. I've spoken to artist groups, and so yeah, I've had a few clients that identify themselves as artists or creatives.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I always wonder just if the dynamic is a little bit different when you're dealing with someone who's more of a business mindset against someone who's a creative mindset in terms of how they approach their problem solving and their stuck points.
It is. Yes, it is a very different thing. I do much better with people who, all right, so my favorite professor in graduate school, his theory on working with people was either they were wound too loose or they were wound too tight. And if they were wound too tight, your job was to help loosen them up. And if they're wound too loose, your job is to help tighten them up. And I love that approach, and that has served me very well for 25 years. What I've found in general is that a lot of creative people can be or tend to be wound too loose. I'm not as good at working with people who are wound too loose and helping tighten them up. I'm much better at working with people who are wound too tight and help loosening them up.
Yeah, I guess I can get the whole loosening people up. I toggle between the two.
Well, yeah, you have both. You seem to be both sides of your brain. You seem to be pretty balanced. There are a lot of creative people who are not. In the Myers-Briggs, they would probably be a P, which is, everything kind of has the same priority. It's hard to make a list or prioritize or make a schedule. And I'm not as good at working with those people. I'm much better at people who are super rigid and helping them loosen up.
Yeah, we need people like you then. All right, creative people, we got to tighten up. We're going to be successful. We got to tighten up. Enjoy both sides of the brain. Enjoy being able to do all things well.
Yeah, well, and just understanding. And I would say if you don't, it's not even that you have to learn how to do it. If you want to do your creative thing, but it's understanding that the business side has to be done. So if you don't want to do it, get someone else to do it for you. But understand, if you want to support yourself art with your creativity, you have to run it like a business, and there has to be that in place. So if it's not you, it has to be somebody, your partner, or get a business partner, or your spouse, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that probably, being able to outsource that operation probably would help a lot of creatives with their mindset that the business side feels quote unquote dirty to them. Oh, I don't want to interfere with art and business. I don't want to mix the two together. But having that outsource, you can continue to write your books and promote yourself and not have to worry about the side that you really don't like or enjoy.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah. Now, with your book, it's always said that, writing is 5% and marketing and promoting it is 95%. What have been some ways that you've kind of put your book out there for people to get their hands on it?
Okay, so you're not going to like this answer. I really haven't. The show, anytime I speak, I take my book, but I really haven't marketed it because I wrote it as kind of a big business card. Truly, that was my purpose in doing it. So I never wrote it to make money from it. I wrote it to, one, to create credibility for myself, and two, to introduce people to my work. So when I speak, I take my book and I sell some copies. It used to be on Amazon. It's not anymore because I self-published through Lulu, and their contract, whatever happened with Amazon, that doesn't happen anymore. And I just have never formatted it for Kindle, although I'm thinking that would probably be a really good idea. So I really have not marketed it.
No, actually, it's not a bad answer, because I think that there is a lot of writers who do that. There are a lot of writers who do that. There are a lot of people who are in business who do that, who use their book as a way of, one, promoting themselves, two, giving themselves credibility, three, gaining opportunities to speak, in a larger form, because the book does, like you said, lend itself to giving you credibility. So, no, the answer is not terrible. It's not wrong. It's just fine.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, because there's a time and a place that, every author, every writer isn't writing for the same purpose. And that's the beauty of it all, is that every writer has a different purpose for writing their books. So from a purely business perspective, you got it.
Thank you. And I think that you bring up a really good point. You just need to be really clear from the beginning your purpose for writing your book.
Yes.
And then, so for me, I was really clear. Like, it was not my purpose to become a bestseller or an Amazon bestseller in my category. so I didn't market it so that it would be.
Right. Now, a few minutes ago, you mentioned that, that you probably should put it on Kindle at some point. What other lessons have you learned about just having a book,
Wow. Not really sure. Definitely putting it on Kindle. I don't know that I would ever. The book launch was really big a couple years ago. That never interested me. I think just getting it out there, making it easy for people to buy it. The other thing I will say from a practical point of view, so I self-published on Lulu, and I like that because it's print on demand, so they can order it straight from Lulu. Unfortunately, when they order it straight from Lulu, while I get my commission, they're Lulu's customers, not mine. So I have no idea who orders my book from Lulu. It would be great to figure out a way to do that differently so that the people who ordered my book were my customers.
I recently learned of a really cool tool. It's called Book Funnels. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
You have to look into that. But check it out. What it does is it allows you to take your book, and they'll actually format it. You upload your book into their software online. They'll format it in every single type of e-format, and then you stick that on your website, and then people will download it from your site, and that's how you can do that.
Book Funnels.
Yeah, take a look at that.
I will.
We're talking tools now, people. We're talking tools. But that's a great tool. So yeah, check out Book Funnels. If you're looking to pull your book onto your website and have downloads from your site, not just from Amazon or Lulu or other places, Book Funnel. So, speaking of tools, are there any tools that you use when you write or for your writing?
Nope.
Just Microsoft Word?
Just Microsoft Word.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
I'm pretty old. I'm pretty old.
Pretty old school, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you didn't say that you handwrote your book and uploaded, handwritten copies, we're okay.
Hey, you know what? That could be unique, though. That could be actually one of those things that makes me unique.
It's like reading personal letters,
Exactly. And I have to say, I've got another couple books in me. I just haven't formulated them. They're percolating back there. So I'm going to write another one or two.
In the same vein?
No, different.
Different. Ooh, so we'll have to be on the lookout for your new books when they come.
Yes.
Yeah. So how was your book received? You said you took it to a trade show that you were at, or a speaking engagement you were at. How was it received? You said you got some feedback, but expand a little bit.
Oh, I've gotten actually really good feedback from people. That was actually really fun when I put it out there. And I introduced it to my newsletter list, and I got quite a few people who would just email me and say, I read your book and it was really life-changing. It was really wonderful. And even people who weren't in my target market, that was actually the fun part. People who weren't in my target market, who were like regular standard business people, who I thought that it would just be a little weird for them, fabulous feedback from them. So that's been really fun.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think that's one of the best parts of writing is just knowing that it's helping somebody, knowing that what I've written or what I've put on paper is changing someone's life or adding value in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, I agree.
So, coming in for a landing, tell me some authors that you admire, some writers that you like.
Wow. I read mostly nonfiction. So I like Alan Weiss. I like the Daniel Goleman, like Social Intelligence, that sort of stuff. Who else? I don't know, I have a lot of. I love to read, so I have a lot of books, and I have a lot of books that sit on my nightstand and mock me.
No, I think we all do. I've got a Kindle full. I've got my Kindle app, which is full of books. I got stacks of books everywhere. I'm like, man, I'm gonna find a way to get to all of you at some point, but I end up getting to bits and pieces of each of them. Yes,
well, and that's probably why I like to read nonfiction these days, because when I read fiction, I like to get into my fiction, and I just don't have huge chunks of time.
Yeah.
So nonfiction, you can read a couple pages and then put it down and get back to it whenever.
Absolutely true. What book or books would you say are your go-to books on business or professional development?
Wow. That it really does depend on what I need at the time. So I really loved, have you read Conscious Capitalism?
I have not.
I loved that book. John Mackey, he's the co-founder of Whole Foods, and Raj Sisodia, he's a business professor at Stanford University. Great book. That was very helpful. Value-Based Fees by Alan Weiss, very helpful. Self-Promotion for Introverts, because I'm an introvert. That one was really great. So it really does depend on what I need at the time. There are lots of fantastic books.
Oh, no, I can totally agree to that. Yeah, depending on the mood I'm in or what I need to know,
right?
Things change. Things change for sure. Now, what's the best advice you've ever received about business or about writing?
The best advice I've ever received. That would be, I think, be yourself and trust yourself.
I like
and
that.
That was really pivotal for me, because I was working with a coach, and I've always kind of trusted my intuition, and my coach was a very strong personality and brilliant businesswoman, but we were very different personalities, and I started questioning myself and not trusting myself, and that absolutely affected my business. And I was trying to be something I wasn't, and trying to fit a mold that I just couldn't fit. So be yourself, know yourself, trust yourself.
That's interesting too, just that whole piece about intuition, because that's a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing to follow those hunches, and you always kick yourself when you don't follow them and you look back and say, I should have followed it.
Yes.
But at the moment, but you're in the heat of the moment, like, man, is this the right decision? Is it? And it always feels right, and then you don't do it, and then
yes. In fact, I teach people how to recognize, how to recognize intuition, and also how to distinguish between intuition and fear and that sort of stuff, because that is super huge. I've used my intuition and I've relied on it my whole life. And so to be in a period of time where I felt disconnected from it, or I felt what I was being told really went against what I knew to be right or true for me, was really a challenge. And it actually took me a while to come back from that.
Wow. And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but could you give an example of the difference between listening to your intuition versus listening to your fear?
I could.
Like, how do you know? Like, I guess my question really is, how do you know which voice is which? Because fear is definitely talks very loudly.
It does. Fear talks very loudly, and it shows up when you are stepping outside your comfort zone. Intuition. Here's the thing. Intuition almost always doesn't come with an emotional charge. So if you feel anything with intuition, it's almost always a sense of peace. So if you are feeling an emotional charge about something or a fear about something, that's almost not intuition, almost always not intuition. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. That's actually really good. So I hope you guys were paying attention to that one. Intuition has no emotional charge.
Right.
I like that a lot. That's useful. That's very useful.
And the other thing is that a lot of times you'll feel it in your body. And so now you can get intuition that, like, you're walking down a street and you pass somebody and you can kind of get like you pass a dark alley and you're like, that doesn't feel. That can be intuition, but it's not going to be that gripping fear. Does that make sense? It's just a nudge in the other direction.
Yes.
Like, have you ever met somebody that when they step up to you and shake your hand, you're like, ew, like,
yes.
you need a shower. that's your intuition saying you guys aren't a good fit. Or likewise, if you meet someone, you step in to shake their hand and you feel, like you've known them forever.
Yep.
Those are intuition, but they're not really strong emotionally charged feelings.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying, like the feeling of peace, that feeling of knowing that this is correct.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. Now, in closing, how can our listeners find you, connect with you, and even be coached by you?
Well, the best way is to go to my website, melanieyoast.com. And you can download my free report. I'm going to be changing it soon, but right now it's The Alchemy of Success. And learn about my clients and see some of my very old blog posts.
Hey, that's A-okay. Like I said, you've added lots of value today. And I think, for us, in that creative sphere, a lot of the things you say definitely resonate. Just being able to understand our intuition, because we do run on intuition pretty high when you're an artist, a writer in that collective. You live off of intuition, you live off of your feelings. And so being able to have someone to help you and guide you through that as you go through life is not a bad thing.
Yes. And a lot of people do think that fear is intuition, and a lot of times it's just not. It's what I call lizard brain, is telling you, because lizard brain is wired for safety and security. So when you are stepping out of your comfort zone, lizard brain's that's scary. It's gonna be like danger, danger, danger. And so it's easy to mistake that fear and that primary wiring for safety and security as intuition.
Awesome. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was fun to chat with you.
It was. Like I said, I love everything you shared today, and I feel like just the usefulness for writers who are listening to the show to understand that, hey, you can do this. You can overcome fear. You can learn to listen to your intuition. You can follow your heart. You can do it and not feel dirty and corrupted by money if that's how you feel about money. But you can also do it, and Melanie's giving you guys all permission to create and to make money while you do it. You don't have to be poor and broke to be a creative.
Yay! Yes, amen.
So if you feel that way, definitely follow Melanie on her social channels, visit her website, and even be coached by Melanie if you have those feelings, but have permission to create and be awesome. And we'll see you next time.